You found yourself on another episode of Locked On Bulls. In today's episode, me and Pat are going to talk about Andre Drummond opting into the second year of his contract to stay a Chicago Bull. Could P. Will potentially get a contract extension up to $100 million? And Ryan Russillo calls the Bulls GM job the worst in the NBA. We're going to talk about all that plus more on today's episode of Locked On Bulls.
You are Locked On Bulls, your daily podcast on the Chicago Bulls, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Locked On Bulls. That's Pat, the designer, host, and creator of the Windy City Breeze and host of the Chicago Bears podcast over at ESPN 1000. I'm Hayes, host and creator of Chicago Bulls and Chicago Bears Central. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Pat, let's go ahead and jump into these topics for today, man. Andre Drummond announced officially, unofficially, that he will be picking up his option. He says he actually loves playing in the city of Chicago, and he'll be back. What do you think about Drum picking up that option to stay a Chicago Bull?
I like I said before we started, I was a little surprised, just because I thought that he played well enough and was underutilized enough to go out and get a little bit more somewhere else. But hey, I'd love to have him back. I think that it's very much like we've talked about with Drummond before, right? When he's being the Andre Drummond that is the rebounding monster, the guy that's under the basket, doing receiving the outlet passes, playing up defensively, right? Like he's the guy you love. When he Euro steps and draws 4 fouls in a first quarter, he's the guy you hate. But I think when you're talking about, coming in at $3.3 million, you're not going to do much better at a backup center. He's happy here. I think that probably the situation that he went through last year, he talked about that on the I Am Athlete podcast, where, the mental situation that he went through and kind of how the Bulls were very supportive of him. I think that probably plays a part in it as well. So
that's a great point.
I love the fact that there's enough negatives we can say about this organization. It's good to know that they are taking the mental health side, the player health side, and what players are going through seriously. And I think that probably plays in to the situation with Drummond wanting to come back. And I think that he's probably, if Billy plays him, he's probably the best backup big in basketball. Is there a better backup big?
Bobby Portis.
I'll give you that.
Yeah. That's just off the top of my head.
He's probably top 3 there. Probably top 3. I can't think of, I'm trying to think of like backup bigs that I look at and I'm like, yeah, he makes a huge, I guess Walker Kessler maybe on the young side.
I mean, he was a starter at the end of the season.
He did start by the end of the year though. Yeah. I don't know. Listen, you got whatever that is, right? You know that Andre Drummond's a guy that can go out and every now and then he has flashes of the guy.
Derek White,
2020.
Big forehead. Are we counting that?
His forehead is big, but his game is not. If we just going off of that, I mean, technically, Buddy Hield's teeth are the biggest backup in all of basketball. If we being 100% honest, his teeth and Derek White headband got the same color.
That's wow. But no, I just off the top of my head, Bobby Portis I'll put above him. Naz Reid I put above him as well.
I'll agree with those.
Yeah,
I'll agree with those.
But yeah, I mean, Drummond, listen, and the thing is that we saw there were times where Drum absolutely did some things that deserved him sitting down. But there were times where he was cooking, albeit in the Miami game where he should have been out there and he wasn't too. So hopefully and that's the thing, I hate going back to this because it's the same thing we're talking about this time last season. When the Bulls decided to bet on continuity, we thought, okay, with continuity, hopefully that comes with knowing how to better utilize your roster since you have familiarity. But we can't even bet on that because we did that last year and we still misused a lot of pieces that were on this roster the year prior. So,
well, I think here's the thing, right? Now that you kind of have a clear-cut answer on Lonzo's not going to be back. And if he is back, They're not betting on it this time. I swear to God, if they bet on it again, don't worry about it. They're not betting. I'm putting it in the air. They're not betting on Lonzo Ball coming back. Now that you have that answer, coming in, you need a point guard. Even if you believe Kobe White is the answer at that point guard position, I think you see that Ayo Dosunmu might not be the answer, at least at the point guard position. So you need to go find somebody. Does that change how we see this team used? Because again, while it shouldn't be the case, when everybody was in the right spot, Billy Donovan looked like a much better head coach. That 14-9 run the second half of the season, we were kind of like, so this is what he wanted to do.
Well, I mean, the thing with Billy Donovan is Billy Donovan's a superstar coach, meaning that he leans on whatever the stars of the team are, their strengths or whatever else. And so, like, having a point guard out there that's going to help direct things definitely helps. And I mean, to Drummond's point, we saw Drummond, and as much as I know you're down on Dragic, like they had a chemistry at one point coming off the bench that was just really good. So hopefully, we see some, like, Drum has enough. Whereas, I mean, his contract's not like it's huge. $3.3 million for what Drummond provides. Listen, I'm not mad at that at all. You get every day, I'll take that.
Yeah, and I think that, right, like, at the end of the day, it's just about how we utilize them. I think that. Listen, I had this rant last season. It was I had a lot of rants last season. We talked about that because Nick was looking for him for, like, clips and stuff like that. Had a lot of rants last season. But the death of small ball needs to happen. Andre Drummond is important. Like, I get, like, there's certain times where you want to use small ball, and there's certain times but keeping a guy that is 7 feet tall, that is bigger than everybody else on the other side, and can go up and rebound and can just turn around and put his arms up and put the ball in the basket. It's good to play those guys on the court. And I think that that's the one thing that I look at from Billy Donovan last season, where there were too many moments where he wanted to go small ball to try and defend things or try and be more aggressive offensively. Yeah. And it just didn't call for it, in my opinion.
I think, well, just because you said that, Billy Donovan now will run a lineup of all starting 6'2" and below players. Like, it's going to be what it's going to be. It is what it is.
We running the Small Kings lineup?
yeah, Small Kings lineup.
Shout out to the Small Kings.
That's funny, bro. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, Drummond provides something that's needed on this team. We don't have true rim protectors as far as shot blocking. Drummond provides a little bit of that, but also just the ability to keep people from getting to the rim at all. So, we need that. What he can provide out in transition. I want us to be a team that gets out in transition again. Whatever point guard, whoever you need to sacrifice, whatever needs to happen, because just get us out in transition, we can be a dangerous team. That's it.
I'm going to tell you how it's going to happen. Listen, we're going to go out there. We'll probably end up signing somebody who can just be a keep things afloat point guard. We're not going to go spend no big money because we're not going to sit there and tell Lonzo your career is over, so we're done with you. It's just not how the Bulls are. Dalen Terry and Andre Drummond is going to be the duo that is going to have us the most excited off of this bench. It's going to account probably for a solid 47 wins, though.
But no, that's the thing. Dalen, I hope that Dalen Terry earns the right to be unleashed a little bit more, because him in transition and his playmaking ability out in transition, I tell you what, and his ability to dunk it on your head as well, him, Drummond, Ayo in transition may not be that bad of a look coming off the bench, but they have to play defense and get turnovers to get out and rebound the ball well to get out in transition.
I said this last season. One thing I love about Dalen is when he catches a rebound, that boy flick his wrist. It looks like Lonzo. Like, it's just like, boop, and the ball is ahead. And like the ball is flying halfway across the court, hitting somebody in stride. Like, it looks like Lonzo, but everybody's like, nah, we're not going to play this guy that kind of looks like Lonzo sometimes, even though, sometimes he kind of looked like Lonzo. By the way,
Dalen wasn't ready though last season.
He wasn't. Well, here's the thing. I don't know, because I think that when the opportunity came where he was forced into a game, every time we saw his impact, and we saw a guy who made an impact, and we saw
true, but in a lot of those situations too, he got caught out of rotation. Sometimes, like, don't get me wrong, he did good things too. I'm not saying it was all bad. Yeah. And the thing is, who's to say that had he not been thrown out there, he would have went through those growing pains a little bit earlier, and by the end of the season, we could have had a more refined product. Still raw, but a little bit more refined than what he started off the season with. And to his credit too, he's done some work on that jump shot. That jump shot is so much of a better release. He's still got a little hitch in it, but so much of a better release than what it was when he came into the league, man.
This team feels like it feels like we're just trying to hold on until one of these young guys like can figure it
Develops.
out, or all of them. Like this, it feels like we got like the older guys that we're just investing in now to be competitive. And then there's just like, I mean, Kobe's 22, 23, P. Will's 21, Dalen's young, right? Like you got all these young guys on the team, and it's just like, hey, let's see which one hits. Like Marko Simonovic, it feels like we brought Marco over here. Hold on, it feels like we brought Marco over here to stash him overseas. Like we just wanted him closer so that we could see him, but he's still stashed overseas.
That is hilarious. So AK didn't want to have to go overseas every
Bro,
couple of months to go view him. That's what it was.
Bro, that's it. He just wanted them to have a closer address so he didn't have to get on the plane.
That's hilarious, bro. That's hilarious. But we're going to talk about one of those young players who could be in for quite a big payday. But before we do that, we got to talk about Game Time. Game Time makes it easy to get last-minute tickets. Game Time is the place, actually, for last-minute tickets. Forget planning months in advance. Game Time has deals on tickets right up until the day of the event. Get exclusive flash deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. The Game Time guarantee means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. It's the fastest growing ticketing app in the country for a reason. Get images of your seat before you buy so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. Buy the tickets in a matter of seconds, 2 taps, you're all set. Tickets are sent directly to your phone so you never have to dig through your email. Snag the tickets without the stress with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and use redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, Pat. I'm not going to lie to you, bro. I like P. Will a lot, but when I read this, that he could sign an extension up to 5 years, $100 million. Now, once to say you pay for potential, right? If you want to hold him in, you pay for potential. I also think that P. Will, what we know about him, he seems like a reasonable kid. I don't necessarily see P. Will going to the table like, hey, I'm worth $100 million. I want that $100 million. That's the most I can get. Let me get that. But once to say, like, when it goes to the drawing board, him and his agent, if they're pushing for that full extension at $100 million, Pat, from one Pat to another, what's your response?
You want us to get you a U-Haul, or you gonna just get somebody to pack that up? Take that. You gonna do the 2 men in one truck? How you gonna do that? Listen, I hope P. Will develops. It would suck if he developed somewhere else. That's insane, and it's not realistic. I do agree with you that I think that P. Will would also have to take a contract based on his value that there is. But I think now I look back on the Bulls. Now I look back at AK. Now I look back at Billy Donovan and say, okay, this dude might make $100 million. Are you going to put him in a position where he could possibly be $100 million player? Or we going to keep him as the power forward backup number 4 scorer on this team? You know what I mean? And I think that that's the real question that this team needs to kind of figure out, because to me, yeah, is P. Will stepped up enough to even be having this conversation, for us to be having this conversation? No, P. Will, to me, I mean, right now, he's a $60 million player over 5. Like, I wouldn't pay him anything more than that. Nice bench rotational piece that sometimes plays defense.
Listen, my biggest thing is that, like, you as much as P. Will has that potential, you can't pay on that until you see some shape or form of it. Now, if P. Will comes out and he has a year where it's like you start seeing the things start lining up for him, and you're like, hey, we really think he had a mini breakout, but we think that big breakout's next year. You can convince me at 5 years, $85 million. But the dude got to come out and lead the team in scoring. We got to go to the second round because of P. Will. And then at that point, all right, you want $100 million, he'll give it to you. But other than that, you ain't getting $100 million. $100 million? Come on, fam.
He's got to have that Kawhi season, right? Like where all of a sudden you looked at Kawhi. Remember, Kawhi early on this is not the Claw versus Paul debate. But Kawhi early on was a player that was just utilized for his defense, just utilized for being able to go out there and stop the guy across from him. He wasn't utilized for his offensive game. Now, he had more of an offensive game than P. Will has shown, but like, what was he, 10 points a game back in the day, right? Like he was a role playing piece, and they got him on a little bit of money. He went back out there, he proved himself, and he got a lot more money after that, right? Like, that's the hope, the trajectory we're hoping for from P. Will. But realistically, we haven't seen that happen. So the fact that this conversation is even being brought up is just like, we're in the offseason. That's what it tells me. Yeah, like when Muzz's talking about this, we're in the offseason. You know what I mean? Because there's no way anybody's talking about P. Will making $100 million.
Yeah. Except us, because we're reporting on an article that literally is just like, hey, I understand that you need some offseason, that you need some offseason content, but yeah, it's not looking likely. Like, P. Will right now is getting paid $7.7 million, and next season will be 9.8. If we extend him a qualifying offer, the qualifying offer is at $12 million a year. It's not looking likely there, fam.
I'd probably give him just under that. I'd probably give him about 11.5 a year.
Listen, 5 years, $55 million. I'll take that.
Yeah, I mean, like, he's just show me something. Show me something consistent money. Show me something consistently. That's the real thing about P. Will. And here's the one thing that I'll give him credit for. The one thing that I can look at P. Will and say he actually turned himself into the best at something that we needed last season. He turned himself to the best three-point shooter the Chicago Bulls had, the most consistent three-point shooter the Chicago Bulls had. And so I do like that. It's good to see that he kind of found his role. We've talked about him. All right, go out there, find your role, find where you fit. How do you fit into this offense? That's what the Bulls needed. P. Will was able to give him that. Now, I turn my attention back to Billy Donovan. I turn my attention back to Arturas Karnisovas, and I say, I love having DeMar here. I love having Zach here. I love having Vooch here. I know it doesn't amount to much at the end of the day, but 40 to 47 wins is a lot better than 10 to 15, right? It sucks being Detroit. Ku's been in off-season mode since week 3 of the season. Shout out to Ku, man. Actually, big shout out to Ku. Glad to hear that your wife is feeling better. He's been dropping updates on Twitter, host of Locked On Pistons, man. Love and prayers from the Locked On Bulls side of things. That's the only time that we will send love and prayers to the Pistons, when my man Ku is going through some things. But outside of that, Pistons suck. But I think at the end of the day, you have to have the conversation on, are we blocking P. Will from being able to do more, from being able to be more, from being able to attack more? Because you're not going to give DeMar DeRozan a backseat. You ain't going to give Zach LaVine the backseat. I think you got to, I don't know if point forward is the right role for him, but my guy, we called him Passive P. Maybe let him pass a little bit.
That's funny. I mean, P. Will has to step up. Like, and I would say this, like, I do want the Bulls, if they can, considering like point guard first, handle that first, but bring in some competition for P. Will in that starting power forward position that's not a 6'4" guard. And I really hope that I want to see P. Will come into the season, take over the starting power forward role, and actually hold on to it because of his play, not just because of his size, not because he was a 4th overall pick. I want his play to be indicative of him earning that starting forward position for the Bulls next season.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the tough part is, right, is P. Will the player that's going to take that position? We've seen him lose that position twice already.
Mm-hmm.
Is power forward where he has to play? I think that's the question mark that a lot of Bulls fans have when it comes down to P. Will. Like, I would love to see him take the power forward position by the horns and go out there and dominate. But realistically, he was a wing. He was a wing in college. He comes to the NBA. He was a wing. Yes, he does fit the modern day NBA power forward. People saying that he can't be a power forward is the dumbest thing that I've heard. Like, we literally watch power forwards smaller than him every night.
Every single day.
Every night. Like, I don't know where we get that from. But again, I think that goes back to comfort in position, where a guy is comfortable at. There was an adjustment period for P. Will. He ends up getting hurt in that second season. He comes back. He kind of adjusted a lot slower, but finally found a rhythm at the end of that third season. Like, I think there's just a lot of factors there where you have to ask yourself, are you putting your player in that right position?
Yeah. And I mean, ultimately, I mean, that's up for P. Will, right? And of course, Billy Donovan and the coaching staff to kind of identify some things, but clearly P. Will got some things he needs to work on. And I think the thing, regardless of whatever position, come out, be aggressive, give a consistent level of effort, regardless of the position. Let that position stuff eventually work itself out. The effort and energy thing is what we need to see from people consistently first, and then we can work out the rest later.
Man, if he would just like run, like me and Hayes, I swear, like me and Hayes saw P. Will. You think P. Will is actually slow. And like we saw him run from like half court down the court, and I was like, "This man is fast as heck." Like we watched him in that Miami game, like blow past everybody. I was like, "He is fast as heck, and he's actually strong, going in one direction. Why don't he do that more?"
Yeah, up and down, he's fine. It's the lateral quickness is his only time. Like, that's it. He's not a slow player in general. It's just the lateral quickness. And even then, it's relative to him. And that's probably what the biggest thing that's going to stop him from being wings, because some of those faster wings, him laterally, it may be barbecue chicken. But, that's a story for another day. But yeah, people just got to bring it together, especially if you're talking about $100 million. But moving into the last topic today, before we get up out of here, Pat, Ryan Russillo and Bill Simmons, we're talking about the worst GM jobs across the NBA. And Ryan Russillo, it came off as somebody who was really unaware of everything that's going on with the Bulls, which is fine. Yeah. He covers nationally, so that's cool. But calls the Bulls GM job the worst. How you feeling about that, Pat?
I think the part for where I look at Russillo's article or the podcast with Bill Simmons and kind of what they were breaking down, they got me confused was they basically were saying that like the Bulls GM job has a bunch of questions on it. And I don't think that it does, right? Like, listen, your question right now is, are the players that are going to perform up to what they've shown you that they can on this team? But I don't have a lot of question marks on this Bulls team. I think this Bulls team just is what it is. That's the problem with the continuity statement, right? Like, when I look at this team, I don't have questions on how guys fit. They brought up kind of like, there's still questions with the offensive fit. Where?
Yeah.
I've watched Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan fit perfect with a point guard in the situation. That's not a question. It's a question on, are they going to go get a point guard? I watched them fit perfectly with 2 point guards running the show. I don't see the Bulls as this giant question mark. I think that a lot of people think there are a ton of questions with this team, but I think that there's just a ton of answers that we don't like the answer to, so we call them questions. Like, guess what? There's not a lot of leadership on this team. That's an answer. There's probably not going to be a ton of leadership on this team next year. Still an answer. I know what this Bulls team is. I'm not questioning it. And so when you talk about, right, the worst GM jobs there are, I think that it's a job right now that took an unexpected turn, that the Bulls overcompensated when somebody was going to come back. And that's on the front office.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I can look at worse GM jobs around the league, because I tell you what, I wouldn't want to be a GM of a Michael Jordan owned team to save my life.
Yeah, no, not at all. All you get out of that is a lot of shoes. But I mean, like, I
tell him to hire Skip Bayless as the GM right now.
You know what I mean? Like, he's fresh out here. Him and Lil Wayne. I'm trying to think though. I guess the real thing is, right, rank the jobs that are worse than the Bulls job. Like, I'm not going to tell you that it's top 10. I think that the issue with the Bulls job most of all has nothing to do with half the stuff they stated in that podcast. I think it has everything to do with your owner not wanting you to spend money. Like, realistically, right? Like, if AK could go out and spend money on a point guard, I think he might. But
yeah, I mean,
worst jobs.
And that may be why it's one of the worst jobs. So you got to work for Jerry Reinsdorf.
That's true. That is true. But here's the thing: worst job from what standpoint, though? You're not getting fired.
Well, that's true. You got
like I keep telling us, listen, AK's gonna be here 10 years.
Oh, for sure, bro.
AK's gonna be here 10 years. Get used to him.
Our children's going to take over Locked On Bulls, and AK's still going to be here. That's it.
Both our daughters take over Locked On Bulls by the time AK gets fired.
That's hilarious, bro. That'd be wild to see. Stay tuned for that, y'all, by the way. But yeah, I mean,
stay tuned for it.
Stay tuned for it. But ultimately, all jokes aside, like, The Bulls GM job has its struggles, and part of those struggles is dealing with Jerry. Part of those struggles right now are the things that they listed: having Lonzo Ball's contract, not knowing what to do with that, having an ownership group that won't let you use either exception at your disposal because it sends you into the luxury shacks. That's an issue, right? So all those things, having Billy Donovan as a coach that you guys extended, that's an issue. But ultimately, these issues aren't things that aren't fixable. It's just that we know we're not fixing it because it takes money, and Jerry don't want to spend no money.
Yeah. And that's really all it is to me. Like I'm not surprised by it. I'm not confused by it. Like they were making this seem like this was this deep situation where there's just a million questions at every point. Like I don't have questions on what Zach LaVine is.
Yeah.
I guess the question is, right, like, can he become more than that? I don't have questions on what he is. He's a top 20 scorer in the NBA.
Yeah, or how you put something next to him to make it better, right? But like those are questions you're gonna ask. Unfortunately, that's
even that, right? Like I don't even think I have that much of a question on that. Like Pat Bev made him better. That tells me he just needs basic.
Is Zach LaVine the meat and potato shooting guard of the NBA? Is that what you're saying?
The meat and potato shooting guard of the NBA. That might be Jaylen Brown. I'm not gonna lie to you. Jaylen Brown's out here. I mean, listen.
No, that's twice baked potatoes because the man can't go left to save his life.
I don't know. Like, I don't think that there's like, what's the biggest question with the Chicago Bulls? We do this podcast every day. What is the biggest question this team has?
Oh, there's a lot of them.
I mean, like what though? Like health?
I mean,
health is really. I guess health is
part
health
of
is
it.
our biggest one.
But the thing is too, I think once these contracts do start clearing up, the Lonzo contract, DeMar gets off the books, whatever it is, I think we're going to see AK go to work again, and I think it's honestly going to be a pretty quick set of work that he does as well once he has a little more freedom and flexibility. So,
but I also think his hope is that the work is paying Patrick Williams, paying Kobe White, paying right. Like your hope is that your work has been done ahead of time, and that these players are going to develop. Now, whether that happens or not is a very different conversation.
Yeah, that's definitely the question there. Let's hope that it does, man. Let's hope that it does. But anything left, Pat, before we get up out of here, man?
Shout out Bill Simmons for killing it in the podcast game, I guess. I don't know. I don't know. It is a good podcast. I'll give him that. Follow us on everything at Locked On Bulls. You can follow me on everything at Pat the Designer. Appreciate y'all for showing love, man.
Absolutely. You can follow me at CEO Hayes, at CEO HAIZE. And thank you for making Locked On Bulls your first listen every day. Make sure you guys are tuned in tomorrow as well. We'll continue breaking down all the latest news and rumors going on around the Bulls during this offseason period. For Pat the Designer, I'm Hayes. This has been Locked On Bulls, man. We about you. Peace, y'all.
Peace.